Hello, everyone. We are here today to get everybody excited about Campus Home Live and visiting the city of Orlando. Prior to our visit, we thought it would be a fantastic opportunity to talk about how we can intentionally create meaningful social impact in Orlando during our conference. We'd like to do this through participating in the concept of social offsetting and partnering with Visit Orlando, Zebra Youth, ACUHO-I, as well as we want to ensure that the conference reflects our values and contributes positively to the Orlando community. Before we get started, I want to let folks know that during our discussion, you'll have the opportunity to drop a question in the chat. And we'll also utilize the last few minutes to answer those questions. Also, if you've got general conference questions, there'll be a know before you go session on June 3rd for any questions in that area. As I'm talking, I forgot that I didn't introduce myself. So my name is Dr. Aramis Watson. I'm the Dean for Residence Life and Student Housing at Southern Methodist and also a member of the ACUHO-I Executive Board. I'm now going to turn it over to Mary to give us a welcome from ACUHO-I.
Thanks so much, Aramis. I'm Mary De Niro. I'm CEO of ACUHO-I, and in just 30 days, we are gathering in Orlando for ACUHO-I's largest and most visible event of the year, Campus Home Live. Again, this year, we're expecting professionals from around the world to come together for learning, networking, and a moment to just breathe before we all start preparing again for training and all that comes with opening for the next academic year. We understand that where ACUHO-I convenes and holds our conferences matters to you. We do our best to hold our conferences in different geographic areas across North America, mostly in the United States, and many years in Canada, because this is where most of our members live and work. Orlando was selected for accessibility, infrastructure, and the ability to host a large conference like ours. And let's face it, who doesn't like Mickey? We are an association committed to belonging, student success, and the power of making campus home. We understand our presence in any city extends beyond just the conference walls. And today's program reflects our commitment. Social offsetting asks us to consider how conferences and large gatherings can create a positive impact through our service, partnerships, investment, learning, and relationships. And I hope that while we're on this session and while we're in Orlando, that we bring lots of ideas back to our own campuses and communities. In this spirit, Orlando becomes more than just a host city. It becomes a partner in advancing the values and the responsibilities of ACUHO-I. So I hope you enjoyed today's session, and I look forward to seeing you in Orlando in 30 days.
Thank you so much, Mary. I'd like to now turn it over to our three panelists to introduce themselves. I've had a fantastic time getting to know them and know that they're going to bring such great information about how we can continue to engage both in Orlando and beyond. So I will start with Shawn.
Thank you, Aramis. Hello, everyone. My name is Shawn Boynes. I am the former CEO of the American Counseling Association. I stepped down from that role last April, so I now refer to myself as a liberated CEO, enjoying a much-needed self-care sabbatical. And some of what I'll share with you later once we get started with our discussion. ACA hosted its annual conference in Orlando in 2025, so this is very fresh for me given the environment and what ACA worked through.
Great. Thank you so much, Shawn. André.
Hey, good morning, everyone. My name is André Molette. I'm the executive director of Zebra Youth, a nonprofit based in Orlando that has spent more than 15 years dealing with youth experiencing homelessness and instability. We operate a drop-in center on North Mills Avenue, a housing program for young people between the ages of 13 to 24, and case management that meets young people where they are. I just came to Orlando from California as of February of this year after a decade of public health nonprofit leadership and HIV programming. My connectedness is really also being a student leader. I was actually at the University of Utah doing campus housing during the Olympics, which was an amazing time during the 2020, 2022. So that's predating me a little bit, but I'm glad to be here part of the panel.
Andre, I'm very happy that you didn't forget that you're a student affairs expat and also a fellow Utah Ute. So I appreciate you remembering to mention that. All
Thank
right,
you.
Sascha.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Sascha Voss, and I'm the Director of Destination Experience for Visit Orlando. I have the pleasure of leading the team that helps organizations like this to kind of find the perfect experiences when they're coming to visit our city, and set them up with social offset or other organizations while they're in town. We cannot wait to welcome you. We're so excited that you're coming. And thank you for choosing our diverse destination as your meeting location. We can't wait to welcome you.
Thank you so much, Sascha. So let's maybe get into some questions about kind of what the experience could look like. And Shawn, you mentioned that you've worked with an organization that centered the model of social offsetting. You've worked with a social offsetting organization as a board member. Can you talk a little bit about how you've experienced that as both a conference member, planner, and as the organization itself, and say a little bit more about social offsetting?
So at the time I was CEO at ACA, I was also on the board for Social Offset and remain on the board for Social Offset. So that was kind of the first place that I went to when we started hearing complaints from members about ACA hosting its meeting in Orlando. And as many know, conferences are booked many years out. So the contract had been signed many years before. And given the current external and political environment, people were concerned about hosting the meeting in Florida. So when I reached out to Social Offset and the team that helped me kind of work through how do we identify the organizations that we want to support and what would this look like, the concept is simple. Social Offset started back in 2019, but the concept is for any organization going into a city, there is a financial impact and an economic impact that it has for the city that it's in. And instead of just kind of going in and leaving your dollars in the city, especially for states and cities where you may not agree with some of the laws that are on the books, social offset is how do you identify charitable organizations or other nonprofits that you can support while you're there. That could be financial support, that could be different types of support. So we identified two organizations, one of which is Zebra Youth, and the other was My Brother's Keeper. And we provided that to members as an option, whether they were coming to the meeting or not, to really show the organization's support of the local community. A lot of times with associations, we say mission is important, but this is a time where you can be courageous and really lean into your mission and have a legacy for these cities that you go to. And I'll leave it at that and touch on some of the other stuff later.
Great. Thank you so much. Let's turn it over to Sascha. Sascha, if you can share with me, or really our membership, what roles can organizations like Visit Orlando play in helping conferences leave a positive local legacy? And how is Orlando uniquely positioned to welcome conference attendees who want to leave a great impact on the city?
Yeah, Visit Orlando's vision is to be the most visited, welcoming, and inclusive travel destination in the world. And we live by that, right? And the inclusive portion is really important for us. We understand that about 500,000 people that live in our city work in tourism. So everybody that is coming to the city is really supporting those people. We have teamed with organizations like Social Offset, which is a gold partner of ours, to really showcase that we want to offset is the best way to kind of to describe it. Things that might be in place that not everybody agrees with. Leaving the legacy is really important for most organizations that visit Orlando. My team specifically works with organizations that are coming into the city on corporate social responsibility or CSR events. We connect them directly with organizations like Zebra, for example, right, to find the right fit for that specific organizations. What is important? What is their mission? And how can we help them create something? And I don't want to, I wrote some things down because there's so many interesting ones that I want to share. So IAPA was recently recently in town, and they partnered with Give Kids the World, and they actually created a 5K, through the Give Kids the World Village to kind of, raise funds for them. We just had the American Thoracic Society in, and they actually worked again with our friends over at Zebra Coalition right before André got there. It's a really recent event. And for Global Pet Expo, which is one of our largest conferences that we have in the city, they donate all their unused pet products back to local shelters and so on. So those are little examples of what an organization can do, depending on what they're looking for and what they're relating to.
Great, thank you so much. Those are great examples. André, can you share with us what does a meaningful partnership look like from the perspective of a local nonprofit when conferences are wanting to engage in community in ways that are authentic and not just transactional?
Mm, that's a good question. My honest answer is that meaningful partnership does start before anyone shows up to the event or conference. It really starts by listening, like really listening to what community actually needs, not just what looks good in a conference recap or makes a great social media moment. From where I sit, there's a difference between authentic and extractive partnership that comes down to a few things. First, let's look at who's driving the agenda. Is the conference dictating the terms, the when, the how, the what counts as an engagement? That's a true tell. A really authentic partnership lets the nonprofit lead because we know that our community and we know our young people. We know what's actual useful versus what's performative. Having 50 volunteers show up unannounced to help out can create more work than it can solve. 50 people sponsoring a meal program or contributing supplies for our drop-in center or showing up to a community event that we designed. That's what meaningful partnership means to us. Secondly, I really want to talk about authentic partnerships that don't extract stories. In my tenure here at Zebra, very short tenure, I've really had to change the story of our youth are not props. They have lived experiences. It is not a teaching tool for someone else's conference reflection. Any engagement that our young people have, or even our staff, has to center their dignity, their consent, and their agency. And just recently within my tenure, I've actually told a lot of organizations and local community agencies that we will not partner with them because I felt like the partnership was not authentic. So I really appreciate ACUHO-I's partnership for coming to us because I felt like it was a very organic one from the beginning. And lastly, real partnership leaves something behind that lasts longer than a conference week. That may be funding, but it also may be a sustained volunteer pipeline. We have universities here. We UCF, which is the home university here, Full Sail. We also have University of South Florida as well, FAMU Law too. So we really want to look at partnerships where the second and third year, not just for y'all coming for the conference, but people who live in the area are sustainable and that relationship is really deepened. And I'll be really direct here on my last point. It comes with resources. It doesn't ask for a nonprofit to absorb the cost of being engaged. My team is very small. We have a team of 7, but we are growing. And if asking us to host, present, or coordinate, you may be pulling time away from young people who need us. And, a resource partnership really respects that. So I really, my hope is that ACUHO-I's engagement with Zebra Youth becomes a model of a partnership where we're not just a stop on the tour, we're a real collaborator.
No, I appreciate that, Andre, because it sounds a lot like, as I'm sure you've experienced working in student affairs, a lot like the work that
Mhm.
we do, of being asked to do with less, all those different pieces. And so I hope that resonates with our membership.
Yeah.
For our next question, Shawn, can you maybe talk about what lessons you learned from your conference attendance and how that can inform how college, universities, and associations engage with their own community as it relates to social offsetting?
Yeah, absolutely. And before I do, I just want to amplify what Andre said. And Andre was not there when ACA partnered with Zebra Youth, but we were very sensitive to how we were engaging, recognizing that sometimes the intention to want to help creates more work for the organization that you're trying to help. We provided space for Zebra Youth to be at the convention center on site as much as they wanted to be. And we amplified that with attendees that were interested in going by to learn more about the organization. And then a shout out to Visit Orlando. They were an amazing resource for us as we were trying to figure out, where would people go if they were interested in supporting LGBTQ, restaurants and Black-owned restaurants and those sorts of things. And they had lists available to us as well. But to answer your question, I think it's important to recognize that, and I don't know how ACUHO-I is structured, but ACA has chapters across the United States, and we have representation in every state. A lot of the members are in academic institutions, so we wanted to make sure that we weren't just kind of coming into Orlando in the state of Florida to kind of have our conference, wrap our stuff up, and then leave. But we wanted to try to make connections with the local chapter and the organizations that we agreed to support so that they could stay connected to those organizations once we stepped out of, kind of conference mode and went back to doing what we were doing as a national organization. So I think it's important to think a little more holistically about the entrance into whatever that city is, and then thinking about how you want to engage beyond that. And it may not be the national organization, but there are people at, whatever your chapter level are that may be interested. And I think if you can provide those opportunities for people to connect, that goes a really, really long way. Like I mentioned before, I think it's about legacy and how do you want people to remember the organization beyond just being there for the conference. For ACA, it was a win-win. People were happy and proud that we were supporting the two organizations that we identified, and it made people feel better about coming to Orlando. Certainly, safety was a concern for a lot of people. We enhanced our security, but outside of that, we kind of leaned into the things that we said were important to us as an organization. And that manifested in the things that we did to support those two organizations. And a lot of what we did kind of connected the dots for people. For example, we had the keynote speaker for the conference to kick things off. His name is Brandon Wolf. I don't know if anybody knows him. Brandon was at the Human Rights Campaign. He recently announced that he's going back to Equality Florida. Um, but he was the keynote, and he is a Pulse nightclub survivor. He is a Black gay man. So we were kind of hitting on all cylinders by having him serve as the keynote, given that we knew people were concerned that the meeting was being hosted in Orlando. So we were like, well, yes, but we have someone that is from this community that was impacted by a horrible tragedy that's also going to serve as our keynote. So that was another way for us to kind of step beyond just saying, okay, we're going to check these boxes and give money to these organizations.
No, thank you very much. I think that those are what you shared is it resonates with what we're trying to do as well. Sascha, can you share with us what does belonging look like in Orlando, particularly talking about the people that live there and what they're experiencing and what you've seen through Visit Orlando, as well as what visitors are experiencing? And how do you hope attendees learn? What do you hope they learn about Orlando, Florida? And how does Visit Orlando share messages of inclusion and belonging? Quite a few questions there. My apologies.
I will try to answer them all as good as I can. Let me take the Visit Orlando head off for a moment, right? So I am, an out, married gay man in the city of Orlando. I live in the downtown core. And I'd like to speak a little bit about kind of my personal experience, right? I am moved, I came here in the late 90s to work for Disney. And it was supposed to be a quick stop, as you can tell by my accent, right? I'm originally from Germany. I wanted to work for Lufthansa. Disney was kind of a foot in the door. It was like, hey, I'm gonna, do this for a year. I'm gonna put this on my resume. And I came to Orlando, and coming from Europe, I was so impressed with the diversity and the feeling so welcome in a city. And since then, that has kind of grown more. It is no matter who you work with, this concept of hospitality and welcoming others, I think, is kind of part of our nature here. So we are kind of like this magical little island in the middle of Florida, where we trying to again, work along our vision and welcome all and make sure everybody feels welcome, right? Because that's what we do, that's being hospitable and listening to others. And so that's kind of my personal thing. And I think, when I think about my friends and when I think about my neighbors and where I live, I think this is what you will find here. This is, what we're trying to get across. Um, I completely understand, when an organization is looking for a destination where they should and should not go. But I, want to remind you that, the people that are behind this, that are really benefiting from you coming, are the people that are working here. They're the small businesses. They are the organizations, they're the workers that are working in tourism or transportation or, whatever it might be. And then, yes, of course, you have amazing organizations like Social Offset, where we can connect you, with organizations. And there's, amazing CSRs, organizations and opportunities all across the city where we can connect you depending on what your organization feels like or what you personally want to do while you're here. Does this kind of answer, Aramis? Do you want me to, did I miss one?
You answered it. I appreciate that, Sascha. And I think, thank you for sharing your personal story. I think that hopefully resonates with folks. It resonates with me as someone who has lived, if I do a correct audit, 5 different places across this country, and each part has its own kind of welcome. I was in Florida briefly as an intern, and first time ever went to Disneyland, first time away by myself. And I can really say that in the time that I was there, it was very welcoming. And again, things change, things evolve, but that is the one piece that I think Florida has kept as it's evolved over the years.
And it's Orlando, again, so interesting, right? Like we were kind of a pioneer, and for me personally, it's easier to me, for me to talk about LGBTQ issues, but we're the first we started, kind of gay tourism in 1991 with the first gay days. We were like, gay cities named us kind of like the most welcoming city. We were the first one that, got that title. So that, we've been doing this for a long, long time. And no matter where the political kind of waves took us, we kind of stuck by that. And again, Visit Orlando, we're proud to kind of promote that with our Orlando for All campaign and so on. We're very, very visible and outspoken with that.
Appreciate that. André, can you speak a little bit about the community that you work with at Zebra Youth? If there's one thing that you could share with us, or maybe possible more, that you can share with us about the community, and what would you like our membership to know about Zebra Youth and the students or the people that you work with?
Yeah, definitely. Before I do that, I really want to come back to something I mentioned earlier. When I was working in student affairs at the University of Utah during the 2002 Olympics, there was one thing that struck me, and I didn't have the language for it at that time. It was how easy was it for people actually who lived in Salt Lake to become invisible. The games were enormous. The athletes were the story. The international visitors were also the story with the host institution. But the young people in that city, especially the ones on the margin, were not the story. They were really just the scenery. So when I think a lot about this work that currently do at Zebra, it's the same dynamic on a smaller scale. When a conference comes to town, when a city builds a narrative about itself for its visitors, there's always a population that gets left out of the frame. And in Orlando, it often includes the young people we serve, especially the most vulnerable LGBT youth of color. So one thing I really want every person in this room to take home is that the young people of Zebra Youth are not defined by what's happened to them. They are not the background to anyone else's Orlando experience. It could be tempting, as a nonprofit fundraising machine really encourages us to talk about youth experiencing homelessness and the language of deficit, the statistics about trauma, systems involvement, foster care exits, and family rejection. all of that is real, but it tells you almost nothing about who actually walks through our door. So when I think about the young people of Zebra, I think they're the most resilient, resourceful, very resourceful, and creative people that I've ever worked with. I mean, they're navigating systems that most adults in this room would find impossible. They're holding down jobs, trying to go to Valencia College, UCF, or Orange County Public Schools Trade Tech. There also could be we have a lot of families in our housing program. They're parenting their younger siblings, advocating for themselves in courtrooms and clinics and housing offices. And they have ambitions, they have careers and families, and the kinds of communities that they want to build. Not biological communities, but communities that are formed just by them being connected together. And many of them want to come back to do this work themselves because they understand it from the way that some people never will. So another thing that I want you to know is that homelessness is a circumstance, not an identity. Young people that we serve are college students, they're artists, they're organizers, future engineers, housing administrators. They're the ones you'll be working with in your own campuses. And in many, their path has been bent a little bit different. For a room of housing professionals, I really think that's worth sitting with. The young people who shows up in the RA's office or the residence life office is in a crisis, is in the same young person with the right support, can become the RA building in the strongest community on your floor. The question is whether the systems around them treat them as a problem to manage scenery again, or as a person to invest in it.
No, I think that's great, Andre. I think it definitely, and I hope people do kind of sit with that in regards to when we see students. I work on a very aesthetically and material pleasing campus, and it's important for me as I do my work to remember that that is a part of our whole here at my institution and not the whole. And really how we work with individuals, how we support the students. They're both part of the major and then part of the margins as well. And when we really work to support the margins, then we're pulling everyone in at the same time and really remembering that. And I appreciate you sharing that about your work.
Thank you.
So we have two questions that were posed to the group through previous through conference to folks attending the chat today. The first one is, and anyone can kind of chime in on this. Well, actually, it's really for Zebra Youth. Sorry about that. While in town, Andre, if you can maybe share with us, outside of being there physically, what are other ways that our membership now and either after the conference can support Zebra Youth?
Of course, that's like a really good question to ask about like how folks can be involved in Zebra Youth. You know, we are starting to do days of service. So we're looking to probably plan around when the conference is to have a day of service. It's going into Pride Month. So we are doing Fridays with Pride. And so we're doing little service projects. Around we have three buildings, our main building, which is on Mills, which is right down the street. If y'all like to take Lime or Uber bikes, I do every day to work because I live downtown. But you can come over or take an Uber, and we'll actually have some community projects. We have some or big organizations that are coming to do some big work. But if you want to do a light lift for an hour, help us paint a mural on the side of the building, we would definitely love that. We're doing a community cleanup as well too. So yeah, Fridays come down to Zebra.
Is there any, as far as if folks are not physically there after we leave, are there ways for financially or other ways? Can we do a lot of community support within student affairs and particularly residence life and housing, old school penny wars type of things? Like what could we do to help engage after we're gone?
Yeah, definitely. We have our Amazon wish list because we are seeing a lot of young folks experiencing homelessness come through our doors daily. We have that wish list. A lot of our high schools, middle schools contributed. UCF is like they do a list buyout. So definitely through our Amazon wish list. And of course, I can forward you the links to donating if you want to donate. We also help with people who want to do matching gifts as well too. So that's definitely a great resource as well.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing that. And
Mhm.
then this one is a little bit more for the whole group, but How does this kind of the social offsetting or us being in Orlando make up for tax dollars that may be going to things that you don't agree with in the state of Florida? How do you kind of balance those two things? Sascha, maybe you can start us off a little bit.
Yeah, I'll have Shawn kind of talk about probably more what social offset does. But, while you're in the city, right, like it's like any place, um, you know, go to a local like it's really really easy, right? Go out and explore, support those local businesses, support, go out to eat, go to local restaurants, and we can help you connect you with that. We work with all kind of locally grown companies that you can support. And I think, just by being here, you're kind of doing the biggest step because again, like I said, we have, over 500,000 people that depend on the tourism industry. This money, that is coming in, that's being brought on helps, fund essential services, infrastructure, everything that is kind of needed. So just by, choosing a destination, you're still supporting the people that live here. But, of course, you can kind of look out what you do. My team can connect, obviously, like I said earlier, with CSR. We have, again, I wrote this down because it's so crazy. Just as an FYI for you, some numbers that, our convention center shared with me, which is, what groups have done, through the last year. They are, the convention center alone donated 60,000 pounds of food for local food banks, 25,000 bags of school supplies, and 1 million meals packed for, families that needed it, for whatever circumstances happened throughout that year. So, we try to leverage, every organization that comes to town and inspire them and ask them to leave some kind of legacy, if it's through social offset or, through other CSR opportunities.
No, thank you for sharing those numbers. Shawn?
Yeah, and then from the social offset standpoint, so none of the funds going to the organization, social offset doesn't get any of that. So it's completely passed through. And our model has changed a little bit, but still, the intention was to be a resource for organizations that were struggling with the issue that we're talking about today. And then, I don't know ACUHO-I's tax status, but one of the things that ACA did as an organization, we applied for tax exempt status in the state of Florida. So we did not have to pay taxes on certain things. So our impact was still the impact of hosting the meeting there, but then again, encouraging, our members and others that came to the conference to support the two organizations that we identified was our way of offsetting. But as much as you possibly can, wherever you go, look into a tax exemption status with the state so you can keep those tax dollars and use them for other things that you may wish to contribute to if it's a place that your organization doesn't feel as though aligns with the values and mission.
That's a great example. And I think just to kind of repeat a little bit, but it's from what I'm hearing, it's about making local choices. It's about being intentional about how you engage locally. That's probably the best way where you can maybe offset some of those federal dollars, those different pieces. And want to bring up kind of in our pre-conversation, we talked a little bit about that there's no state that isn't free and clear of having legislation, of having items that your federal dollars or your local dollars are going to something that you might not agree with. But also at this time, we have an opportunity as visitors to the city to make slightly different choices than we maybe are able to have to make when we are local. And those both that way to help folks who are in the city, still doing the work, still engaged in the topics that are having legislation kind of beat down on them a little bit, if that's a fair assessment of something we've talked about.
Yeah, and Aramis, I will add into that. I think for most associations, there's a degree of advocacy, and that looks different for every organization. But one of the things that I think most organizations have realized is that we are now in an environment where you can't run away from the tough stuff and the hard conversations, and you need to run to these problems. You need to advocate on behalf of marginalized communities and stand up and use the voice collectively of your audience to help fight against these harmful laws that exist. And as associations, there's power in numbers. And I think for many, advocacy is typically at the top of the list for reasons why people belong to an association because you are representing a profession, but that should extend beyond just kind of, on a national level, what can you do locally and encouraging and supporting members and even training members to advocate at the local level because that's where the rubber hits the road.
Absolutely. No, that definitely, and it keys into our final kind of big question is, as you all kind of think about everything that you've talked about, what are maybe some pieces that you weren't able to share quite yet or that we haven't gotten to that would be helpful for our constituents and members to know? And then how can they keep, as we're preparing for the conference and then after we leave, these concepts that you shared today in mind? So whoever would like to kind of start us off.
I can start with it. Andre mentioned something really important earlier, and that was kind of like safety. Shawn talked about it too. I just, Orlando again, kind of very unique location. We were future partners to the study in 2025, and we were named the #1 safest domestic travel destination. And I think that's important, for people to know when they come here, do I feel safe, right? Like, André shared something on our call the other day, and I thought that was really, really interesting, which was how he was welcomed by kind of local, and let's call it local law enforcement. We work really, really closely, with everyone, again, to make everyone feel welcome and safe here, right? Like, I don't think if you don't feel safe, you don't feel welcome. So that goes hand in hand. So, I just want to assure everybody, that, proper measures are in place, that we're working on. We have anything from the TUPS program to, increased law enforcement in certain areas, just again, provide welcomeness through safety, if that makes sense.
Yes, absolutely. That does make sense. Shawn, Andre, anything that you'd like to add?
I will just add that, and I'm sure the ACUHO-I leadership appreciates this, but you're not going to make everybody happy. So lean into the decision that was made and amplify the good and focus on the positive aspects of how you're going to engage with the local community while you're there and also support them as much as you possibly can. And hopefully this will model the way going forward. I think that times ain't changing no time soon. So prepare for the next thing that's going to come up. And Aramis, you kind of alluded to this, but I think when you look across the country, if you dig deep enough, all states have something on the books that probably don't align with what your organization believes in and represents. It's just a matter of the ones that I think that get the most attention are the ones that the media focuses on, which is, women's reproductive rights, LGBTQ plus, anti-Black, those sorts of things. But across the country, there's all kinds of stuff that exists, and you can't just run away from everything. So be proud of your decision, and support those communities as best as you possibly can.
Yeah, definitely echoing what Shawn's saying, social offsetting is still like a young concept in the conference world. Most associations don't even know that it exists. Some organizations treat it as a value statement more than a design principle. It's something that you mention in the welcome letter. You'll get something from a mayor. You'll talk about it. But it's great that you have Visit Orlando as a civic partner and you chose a nonprofit like us to really be visible in naming, someone than having an anonymous line item. So I think that's really meaningful escalation to what this practice can look like. And I really want to encourage your organization to really keep pushing on that. It's social offsetting is framed as a discipline, not as a donation drive. It's a point that isn't about like, having attendees give us money, which we love that giving does matter to y'all. But the point is that conference comes into terms to the fact that the city that you guys are visiting, Orlando, we have a footprint in the same way as a flight has a carbon footprint. It's really responsible for y'all to have the posture to be accountable for that. And I think that the framing of this is really good. So I really appreciate y'all having us for your social offsetting. And I think that, part of your Campus Home Live will go amazing. And we hope that folks will come down to us and visit us, or we'll see you at a booth.
Great, thank you so much. So wanted to give the audience last opportunity to ask any questions, and so we'll leave a little bit of space for them to throw any questions in the chat. While we're waiting on that, André and Sascha, since you are both local, and maybe Shawn, you might have a tip or trick, but is there like a place or a organization or local business that you're like, you absolutely have to visit while you're in Orlando, or something you have to do while we're there? There's always a couple of down minutes in a conference and things like that. Like, I don't have enough time to go ride the teacups at Disney, but that is on my list of things to do. So outside of teacups, what would you share with us?
I
Sasha
think
can probably better answer that. Mary will appreciate this. In the CEO role, I barely had a chance to leave the hotel in the convention center. So I did not get to enjoy much of Orlando outside of all the meeting requirements that I had.
yeah, thank you, Shawn. I hope you get to step away for a minute. And actually you can combine it with, hopefully visiting André and Zebra Youth, because I think the Mills 50 district, where André is, that leads directly into the Lake Ivanhoe area is, kind of the most thriving, interesting, diverse neighborhoods, in Orlando. It's has, the most up and coming food, destination, Michelin award winners that are there. It leads directly kind of into our kind of museum island. You have the Renaissance Theater there if you have, time to see a show, which is like, crazy, immersive theater productions that they put together. So hopefully, you get to, explore a little bit. But yeah, if you can, make it out to the Mills 50, Lake Ivanhoe area, it's a wonderful area.
Sasha, you took the words right out of my mouth because I was gonna recommend Mills 50 as well. They have some, I'm a dim sum person and I love a good dim sum kai kai, which is right on Colonial. I did not know they had a Michelin star, but I was like, this food is amazing. But it's a great restaurant to go to. Mills 50 is amazing. Thornton Park near Lake Eola, where the conference is going to be nearby. Definitely visit the lake. You take a walk around when you're feeling a little, I'm people like to call me a conference queen because I love going to conferences. So like, there's time where you need to decompress. And I think, just heading out to Lake Eola, spinning around the lake, viewing the fountain is a great way to decompress. And then there's a lot of bars and things around that area as well, too.
No, those are fantastic examples. I really appreciate you all sharing that. And Shawn, definitely understand not being able to step away with all the responsibilities. Not everybody gets that time, but if you do, colleagues, hope you're able to take advantage of what was mentioned. We did have one question about any specific volunteer opportunities. And I know, André, you mentioned kind of the Fridays. So if you can maybe talk a little bit more about that. Within the conference, we've invited Zebra Youth to have a booth during the exhibitors area, as well as do an informational session during the conference. So we'll have those two. But André, if you can talk a little bit more about the Fridays you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, so every Friday, we are just doing community service projects. So the big one that's going to be around the week of ACUHO-I is our big mural project. So, the Orlando LGBT Center and us have up two murals. We're getting them repainted, because we just want them to be repainted. And so we're asking folks to come and volunteer. We have some large corporate sponsors who are coming to provide the paint, but we need some manpower as well. So if you come down on Fridays, I know it's before the conference, but if you're here, we would love to have you come down. We'll share the link with y'all in regards to if you want to sign up for that, and we'll give you more information too.
Great, thank you so much. Well, that was the only question we got, and so we will allow people to kind of get on with what I'm assuming is a very busy afternoon for all of us and give folks a little bit more time back. But I just wanted to send us off by saying thank you so much to everyone for being a part of this conversation and for helping ACUHO-I think more deeply about what it means to align our conferences with our values. Today, we explored a really important question about what becomes possible when conferences work to create meaningful impact for both attendees and the communities that host them. We heard the conferences can be more than places where we exchange ideas and build professional connections. They can also be opportunities to invest in local communities, strengthen partnerships, and contribute in lasting change. Through the work of Social Offset, Visit Orlando, and Zebra Youth, ACUHO-I is exploring how our presence in Orlando can reflect the values of belonging and equity. As housing and residence life professionals, we know that community does not happen by accident. It is created through intentional relationships, through meaningful design, and a commitment to ensuring that everyone can thrive. The same could be said for our conferences. I'd really like to thank our panelists, Shawn, André, and Sascha, for sharing their expertise and challenging us to think differently. And thank you to all of you for engaging in this concept and thinking about what could be possible while we visit Orlando. I look forward to being in Orlando, and I hope you all look forward to it as well. Thank you so much, everyone, for taking the time. I consider the three of you my buddies now, so I will hit you up when I'm in Orlando. But thank you so much for taking the time, and really appreciate people being with us today. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having
Thank
us and have a
you.
great meeting.
Yeah.
Enjoy Orlando, guys.
Okay,
Thank you
bye.
so much.